Jenny White, back in the saddle, ready to go.
It's so good to see you again.
It's only been a week.
And I missed you so much. Hey, I watched the show I watched both shows, and I had to stop watching our podcast with Mr. Doherty because I got so angry. I was afraid I was going to have a heart attack. So I had to quit.
I know.
But
Can you believe that? Can you believe
I can't.
How insane these people are that have control.
Don't wind me up. Don't wind me up. We have such a wonderful guest today, and he's not the kind of person that I want to get wound up in front of. So let's not do that. But yes, that was horrifying. And then I watched your video on money, which was really good. You did a great job.
Yeah. Well, I didn't even really have that much time to prepare for that. Because we were gonna maybe do that Wednesday, and then I had an emergency deal and I had to leave and go up to New York, and then came back, and I didn't know if I was still gonna be able to do it on Friday, but that's just kind of thumbnail sketch. Even, I mean, we could go into massive depth on that stuff.
But see, I'm not sure that I want to do that one either, because that one gets me all wound up. Everything gets me all wound up now.
Well, we're in that time.
Yeah. Although I will tell you one thing that was very interesting. I'm changing the topic completely. So this morning I went out to do all my regular chores, and I noticed the well water was warmer than the outside air. I went, what just happened here? It's the beginning of September.
There you go.
I know. Isn't it odd? I mean, this whole weather thing is like, oh my goodness, so bizarre.
Well, it's still summertime, and that's
what
wild.
I'm saying. It's like 95, possibly 100 at the end of August. This is not a joke. I'm not being facetious. When I was in Salt Lake last week, which is where I was with my sister, it was actually cooler here than it was in Salt Lake. The only exception was when we were up in Brighton. And when we were up in Brighton, it was pretty cold up there. But I mean, good night. I kept reading up what the temperature was to my sister, and she was like, you can't be serious.
Is that up in the mountains a little bit more or something?
Yeah, Brighton. Yeah, she lives in kind of around the Cottonwood Canyon area. So she lives right up the street from Snowbird, which is a big resort. But then Brighton is on up down another canyon, and it's higher. And I actually had to put on my sweatshirt to go up there. It was pretty nippy, but it just kept cracking me up. I'm like, you realize it's 5 degrees hotter here in Salt Lake than it is at home. It was a weird one. So, But I'm glad to be back. I did enjoy my trip. So happy to have had all my traveling done. Just for those of you that are this morning. So I'm going to be off again. Starting on the 19th, I have to get my knee finally replaced. So I'll be off for a week or so, but you and Katie are going to have it all handled. So it'll be good.
Sounds good.
Yeah, sure. You did a great job. You two didn't even need me.
Sure we do.
All right. So that was a pretty good, nice fishing expedition to start our show. Our guest today, I'm so happy to have Andrew Pudewa on. I went to see he gave a presentation to a homeschooling, I guess it was a Classical Conversations homeschooling group when I first started homeschooling. And he was talking about his program, IEW. We'll talk about that in a second. But he was talking about it. And I just found him to be, Jules says, that dang, well, it will hopefully not be dang once I'm done anymore. I couldn't even hike while I was in Salt Lake. It was so sad. But he had a program he did a program for us. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, I love this guy. He's so calm. He's funny. he just really ingratiated me in thinking, oh my gosh, I can probably do this. I think I can actually teach the kids this. But his program is really stellar. If we could get his program into every public school, we would be top 10, easy peasy lemon squeezy in English. There's just no way. I'm absolutely convinced of it. It's just that good of a program. But the greatest thing about Andrew was, and we'll talk a little bit more because I don't remember as well as I should, but he moved to Oklahoma from another state. And he, not very long after that, I believe, we were fighting Common Core. And he actually gave a speech for us at our interim study on Common Core and was talking about textbooks and how it was going to change the textbooks. And we'll talk to him more about that. But then he's also got a new program that he's working with. And I guess it's several now because we talked about another one before we came on. Young people, especially those who were homeschooled, they turn around and they go to a regular, a state university, and even private universities anymore. It's silly. And we'll talk to him about that and what this new program is. But let's not waste any more time because he, unlike us, he only has an hour today. So we need to bring him in.
Yeah.
So good morning, Mr. Pudewa. How are you today?
I am doing well, Jenny. Michael, so good to be with you this morning.
Yes, sir.
I am so happy to have you here. This is just an huge excitement for me because I'm not kidding when I was talking about the fact that when I saw you the first time when we had just started classical with our kids, and I saw you the first time and I was, still kind of like, am I going to be able to do? I mean, have 2 degrees in biology, used to be a teacher, but teaching your own kids isn't the same. And I thought, don't know if I can do this. And I saw you do this presentation. I thought, oh my gosh, I think I can do this. So let's start out. Didn't you move here from another state originally?
Yes. My family, we moved my family and our business and almost all our employees at that time, which weren't that many. So about 4 families total. We all came from the Central Coast of California and relocated here in Eastern Oklahoma in 2009. And that was kind of the result of a couple years of becoming aware that we needed to plan to leave California. How to do that, when to do it, and where to go, we didn't know. We just knew we needed to leave. So with some prayer and with some providence and through some connections of couple other homeschool families that we knew that had actually, one of them moved from San Diego, California to this area. We visited a few times and thought, well, it's as good a place as any. We like these people. We like the community. And I never thought I would really like Tulsa as a city. But now that I've been here 15 years, I have to say it's grown on me. And I've been to almost every major city in the country. And I really do like Tulsa, Oklahoma a lot. So we're happy. I intend to die here if possible. And we've grown the business very significantly since back then, 15 years ago. So now we have over 60 people that work for us here, and then a few more that are still remote in various areas. And the homeschooling community here is great. The political climate is I like it, live and let live. Even the people I disagree with on things, they don't get really angry about stuff.
Well, that's good.
So I'm happy about that. And I got to meet fun people like you and talk at the Capitol building and all sorts of things I never imagined.
Yeah, well, we were glad to have you. And our friend Lisa is actually also from California. So she's like, as soon as you said that, and I thought that was where you were from. I thought that's where I remembered. And I drove by the IEW headquarters not very long ago, and it's a beautiful place. I mean, you're located in a really pretty area.
Yeah, we when we moved here, we actually built our first building was out in Locust Grove, kind of out in the forest in the middle of nowhere. And we outgrew that building in 6-7 years. So then we bought another building in Bixby, It's right on the edge of Bixby, Broken Arrow. It used to be a church, and they wanted to sell it and merge with a bigger church. So we remodeled the sanctuary into a video studio and had more office space. And we actually ran out of space again. So now I have another building where we do printing mostly. And but we've been able to create a whole series of video products that have been able to bless both homeschooling families and schools. In fact, you mentioned you wish we were in more schools, and that is the fastest growing area that we see is charter schools, Christian schools, classical schools, Catholic schools, who are all looking to improve both the social environment as well as the curriculum, recovering a more sane classical approach, and we get to be a part of the English composition and grammar part of that. So it's going really well.
Well, I'm going to throw this up so people can see it. This is it's called the Institute for Excellence in Writing. And I'm just going to say this for people who, let's go to the shop part so I can see, let's do writing, because that was my favorite thing. Let's go down a little bit. So you can shop on their website. The thing that I loved about your program so very much was your program did check like 6 boxes at one time. So we would get a book for the kids, and it not only taught them how to write, but it taught them about history at the same time. And I mean, I just loved those books, and they were actually so engaging to my kids. And so I really do, I want to hawk your stuff because it's super easy to follow. The teacher instruction book, the parent instruction book is super easy to follow. The stuff that the actual lessons make them write and make them think about what they're writing. And I don't know about you, but when I was teaching, our kids can't write. I mean, they can't do cursive. They can't critically think. They're having such a horrible time with that. And it's very hard to get them to write a whole sentence. I mean, I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I think that most kids in most schools are really the victim of kind of this modernism, this progressive approach to teaching things. I mean, if we look at a quick history of education, first there was God in schools, okay? And that came with it kind of a rich tradition, the Judeo-Christian classics, the basic, skills of reading, writing, and arithmetic, and that carried over. But in the mid 50s, we saw Deweyism and modernism and progressivism, and it was firmly entrenched by the 1960s, where they'd kicked God out of schools. And of course, if you kick God out, you need an idol to replace it. So the new God of education became creativity. If it was creative, it was good. If it was good, it was creative. And how dare you, tell a kid exactly how to do things? How dare you make them do things? It should all be about discovery and self-expression and experience. And I don't disagree with all of that, but this misguided Deweyism really began a rapid decline in basic skills right around that time. Well, by the 80s, it was pretty clear that this emphasis on, creativity and everything had not improved basic reading, writing, and calculating, and things that people need to do, function in the real world. So then we saw the beginning of the new God of education. So they kicked out creativity and replaced it with, guess what? Standards, right? And so then we had, okay, we're going to fix this by kind of forcing everybody to do the same thing and teach to the test. And so we had, George Bush had, the beginning was the No Child Left Behind. We had Race to the Top. And then we had, of course, the Common Core, the Obama period, the Common Core state standards initiatives. And so what happens with standards is you say, well, every child, by merit of being a certain age, must be able to do these things. And then guess what? You fail because all children are different, and you can't actually compare children based on age. And so, then you have to lower the standards and you still fail. And then you have to lower the standards some more and you still fail. And you have to lower the standards. And somebody comes along and says, oh, these standards are low. That's our problem. Let's raise them up. So you got all these cycles. So, from the 80s, 90s into the O's, that was the big push. Then, I don't know, about 10 years ago, people started to realize, well, this hasn't worked. These tests haven't succeeded in forcing teachers to teach better. And so we need to replace that. Of course, then you need a new god of education, and that became technology. If we get just more computers in classrooms, if we get, a Chromebook or a tablet for every kid all the way down into primary grades, K1, 2, if we have more computers, well, then that will solve all our education problems. And of course, things have only gotten worse even faster. And there is actually statistically verifiable negative correlation between screens in classrooms and basic skills of reading, writing, and calculating. This is not an issue. These are facts that are research that are available to everyone. And yet, what do the schools do? They want more money. Where's all the money? Coming from the tech grants. And so now we're going to have to, and now we've got AI, which will theoretically replace teachers entirely. And every child can interact with the screen at just the right level of challenge and complexity. And, there's some ways in which that could possibly be efficient for older kids. But at the, primary, elementary, and I would say even the middle school level, removing the human component, removing the traditional classical approach is just, it's continuing to create a big hole, a big gap, a big failure, and nobody really knows what to do to fix that in the system as we know it. That's why we see the rise of more options, charter schools, pod schools, hybrid schools are huge. Homeschooling in various forms has grown hugely, doubled or tripled just in the last 5 years. COVID gave it a big boost, of course, but parents are starting to take responsibility. And that's what I love to see, is parents saying, all right, I'm not just going to I'm not going to abdicate my role as the primary educator for my children to some institution that is increasingly clueless about what children even are. So that'd be my little diatribe on that.
Honestly, I mean, we've said that a lot here because, we completely agree with that. And I do worry about AI. I mean, I just honestly believe that if we don't get the technology out of these classrooms, I mean, it's not going to get better. I mean, you could even get rid of the standards. You could get rid of the tests. It's not going to matter. It's the technology that's the problem. And I agree with you too. K-8. Put the parentheses around K-8. No technology, K-8. Then, in high school, start introducing it, get to the point, because they have to know it and they need to be familiar with it, but you can't replace the foundational concepts that these kids in K-8 have to have. Without the foundation, it doesn't matter what technology you introduce. They're simply not going to get it because they're missing the whole foundation. It's just like it's scriptural, right? You build your house on sand. I mean, you got to have a good foundation. So I love that. Thank you for that. That was perfect.
One interesting thing I've done is, the college board who publishes the SAT and other tests and is probably an evil organization, but nevertheless,
yes,
they coined this idiom, college and career readiness. Okay, and I hate that, but let's break it apart a little bit. Now, I own a business. We employ over 60 people. We hire people. Pretend for a minute, and whoever's listening, pretend for a minute and say, okay, you're an adult, you're a professional, and your job is to either teach or to hire and supervise high school graduates. So you have to either teach or hire and supervise high school graduates. All right, so what kind of people do you want? What are some of the things that you would like them to come to you with? And when I ask this of audiences, I usually get things of people saying, they'll say things like, well, respect, punctuality, attentiveness, communication skills, initiative, humility, show up on time. Sometimes the bar's pretty low, and you get a whole little, gamut of things that people say. But when you look at all those, almost everything is character. It's not what you learned in school, it's what kind of person you are. And then I will say, well, can a test and can a high school curriculum teach these things? And generally the answer is no. Where are these things taught? Well, they're taught primarily in the home with the help of extended family and community and church community and responsibilities. Like, what every kid really wants is, honest to God, meaningful responsibility, which seems to be what schools have been contriving to prevent from ever happening for a very long time. So, I think we have seen a very misguided attempt to make academics the key to success, whereas what I have experienced is that really character and virtue, that is the key to success. And I would hire, honestly, Jenny, I would hire blind a homeschooled 19-year-old before I would hire blind a random person with a bachelor's degree in business administration from the University of California, just to put it bluntly.
Well, but I mean, that I want to, we had a couple of comments that I think this one was really good. While the adults are messing around, generations of kids have failed to learn during the most important time, the elementary school years. And I think, and we only have an hour, and I want to make sure we get in quite a bit, and the screens remove their personality and spirit, and we need to get rid of all of those. And then Lisa pointed out that Waldorf schools don't even use technology until high school.
Yeah.
And but it's atheist. She did say that because it's true. And you know what you were just saying, because I was thinking about this a second ago as you were talking. I don't want the state to give private religious schools state funding.
No.
And there's been a huge pushback on me. People say, well, you don't love Jesus, or you don't want Bibles in classrooms. Okay, here's the thing. I love Jesus, but I don't want the state telling churches or religious organizations what to do. And people don't seem to get that if the state is giving you money, the state gets to turn around and say, and now for your money, you will do blah, 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 number 1, 2, 3, 4. And they don't understand. I don't want the state involved in religious schools or religious organizations or private schools that have religious I don't want that. And I saw you going up and down. So I'm assuming maybe you think similarly.
Well, as soon as the state gives money, they will have restrictions on how that money is used. And then there's political battles about those restrictions. So yes, okay, you're a Catholic school, we'll give you X thousands of dollars per student per year, but now you have to, in order to get that, fall into our accreditation standards, and all the teachers we say you've got to hire, and you can't use that money for anything that would be in any way secular. So then what that does is it narrows the freedoms. Whereas if we just didn't do it, there's a disparity between money that goes to public schools and money that doesn't go to private education, but it burdens the private education to the point where it starts to not be what it is called to be. And then you've got schools that say, well, we want to retain the freedom to have a truly Christian curriculum, or a truly Catholic curriculum, or a truly classical curriculum, or we want to be able to hire people who love art or love history or love literature and don't necessarily have a education credential. Oh, but now we can't do that. So now we're no longer competitive with the private schools that take the money. So it actually harms the diversity and the freedom. I'm not as opposed to child tax credits and things like that, as long as it comes as a tax credit, not a allocation of funding. You can use this to buy what we tell you can buy. So it's a tough thing, and I understand all sides of the argument, but I think I'm with you. The less government control, the greater the freedoms people will experience. And yes, funding everything's always going to be a challenge, but I work with a lot of public schools that operate on half the money that a normal public or charter school will get, and give a superior education with half the funding. So you look at that, you got to say, well, something's wrong here.
Well, because it's the same with homeschoolers, and I want to. And part of the I know that there is a big, large group that's watching right now that appreciates you saying that so much, because we're fighting that here in Oklahoma, that they've already given universal school choice, and we're trying to find a way to roll that back. And like Robert said, I pray conservatives start to grasp this concept that government money equals government control, because we don't want that. And we're so worried here, this group of us, that we're afraid that it's going to start creeping into homeschools, and people are going to start taking these credits, but they're not the right kinds of credit. And we're going to end up starting to have homeschool problems, because it's like Lisa says, people are incredibly short-sighted. They see one tidbit of something they personally like and race to implement it with zero long-term consideration. Well, it's like, I can't see past the end of my nose.
That's the result of education that does not teach thinking. And I really don't even like the term critical thinking, because it's such a buzzword and people use it. But one of the things that we teach in kind of a basic way in our writing program is to read something or look at something and then ask some questions like, what are the cause of this thing? What are the effects of this thing? What consequences you have? What elements of this thing are of value? What elements of this thing are not? And this sorting and organizing of ideas that we teach in kind of a simple way in the elementary and middle school actually are teaching some thinking skills that many adults don't have, which is to say, well, what are going to be the consequences downline, long term? And we saw that all through the COVID era. People were not thinking about the decisions that were being made, and then lots of problems coming as the result of that. So I do have a lot of hope, though, that the people coming out of homeschooling, coming out of classical education, coming out of better schools, they do have these skills, and there's really an increase of competent young people coming from kind of the world I live in, thinking better about things and being the next generation of parents as well. So I kind of tease and say, well, we might win in the end because we can outpopulate and out educate the people who aren't having many kids and don't ask the right questions about what we're doing.
Yeah, that's what Julia said. This is funny. Gosh, if people just ask, what are the consequences down the road, the world would be such a better place.
Yeah, but
okay, we're running out. We're getting short on time and I want to get so many things in. So I want to share this screen with you and then we'll share the other one, but let's share this screen first and talk about this particular thing. So, and I'll see if I can make it bigger here. Just 1 second. Okay. This is a program called Unbound. And if you would just give kind of an overview, because I know it's not your program particularly, but you have become involved to an extent. Can you explain it a little bit?
Yeah. So many, many years ago, there was an organization called College Plus, which was designed to allow
I remember that.
Yeah, high school age and young adults to take college classes, distance learning, so distance enrollment with various schools, and kind of bank up credits and be able to get a college degree for kind of a minimum of expense while still living at home or doing something else. And this was very successful. College Plus then got into the commercial market and started having clients like UPS and Chick-fil-A to help bring higher education to their employees. They then changed their identity and became Lumerit. Lumerit was then bought by Pearson, which is part of the evil empire. And Pearson didn't even know that this little group of homeschooling kids doing this existed. And when they found out, they really didn't want that. So the guy who was running it at the time, Jonathan Brush, it spun off and became a separate entity, Unbound. And what Jonathan did was he continued this idea of being able to provide college classes for college and university credit for dual enrollment age kids, which would be 15, 16 on up, outside of the traditional college environment for a much, much lower cost than you would get if you went to college. And then he started developing this approach to project-based education, putting kids in cohorts and teams, and then really focusing on life skills and planning for what you want to do with your life. So there's an element of academics, there's an element of developing relationships, meaningful relationships, and there's an element of developing professional skills. They have a 1-year program, 2 years, or 3 years. You don't have to commit to the whole thing. And I was invited to speak at one of their events. They have 3 live events each year. So the kids mostly are, remote, although they're getting together regularly on Slack and working on their projects and studying together and learning together. But I went to one of their events and I was just blown away. I had 100 kids from 16 to early 20s. They were focused, they were attentive, not a phone or a screen in sight. They were taking notes on paper. They were asking really good questions. And I just said to Jonathan, this is the best group of young people that I have ever had the privilege of speaking to. And then after I finished speaking, they'd come and sit by me, at lunch or dinner and ask me more questions and invite me. And it was like I felt they were so excited about just gleaning whatever they could from whatever wisdom the adults around them had. Almost the opposite of so many young people, which is, I'll suffer adults when I have to, but I don't want to spend my extra time with them. I want to hang out with my peers, etc. No, these kids, the whole community was just so integrated. And I was, talking to Jonathan and got to know him a little bit better. I came and spoke at another event, and then he asked me to join the board. So I'm a board member of Unbound, not an employee, but just a board member. And it's just so exciting to see what they're doing. And, he's got a really interesting deal. First of all, what it costs to do the program is a fraction of what it would cost to go to school for a year, go to even a public University of Oklahoma, some, mid-tier public school. It's half that cost. But he's got this deal where if you do his program for 3 years and you don't get the job you want, you don't get a job that you're happy with, he will refund you the whole amount that you paid. Like, unbelievable.
No way.
He's got companies that are in line waiting to get kids that have graduated from his program because they are so competent in so many ways. And the other thing that's really interesting about his organization is pretty much, with the exception of him, all the people who run this thing are the graduates of this thing. Like, the whole thing is run by their own people. So they understand the culture, they understand the goals, they understand the young people, they understand the potential that it has. And to me, it's just one of the most exciting opportunities out there for parents today who have, a kid who's 15, 16, 17, 18, and they know they don't want to go, end up 100 or 200,000 in debt with a degree that is essentially useless in the marketplace, in a world where the quote skills you learn in getting a degree in whatever, communications, management, business, tech, those aren't the real character virtues that make the difference. But that's what Unbound, I see, is really doing. And if I had known about this when my son was 15, it would have been 100%. I would have been in there with this. Really.
See, that's the thing. When I looked at it the other day, because if you actually go to their website, and I'm going to make it a little bigger again so you can kind of see what's going on. Whoops, or not. Where did it go? What did I do? Hold on. We'll get it back. Okay. Now, there we go. Okay. Too many choices for screen, Go to the Unbound website. I was so disappointed that my kids got out and I didn't know about this, because this looked fantastic and the whole website was just wonderful. They actually have 3 programs, which is Equip for 9th through 11th grade, Explore for 12th grade, and Ascend, which is the post-high school area. And if your kids are in any of those ranges, please go to this website and check this program out, because it just looked phenomenal. And then, of course, when I heard that you were involved, I thought, well, this has to be phenomenal. I mean, we need to get some word out about this then.
Yeah, I would say 100% it is worth looking into. Their website, I think, is Be Unbound.
Yes, it is. It's called, it's beunbound.us, and I'll put that in here. Yes, so that people can see it. We'll put it up for a minute so people can actually find it. It's
the .us is a little different, but you got absolutely nothing to lose. And I, as I said, when I go to these events and I meet these, couple hundred young people, to me, they are just way above the average high school or college student in terms of their thinking about, what do they really want to be? What are they really doing? What is education really about? And the fact that you can do that and combine with it college credits in case you want to go into a field that's going to need, you need you to get your card punched, need you to have that, degree to go to the next step, whatever. Because a lot of kids are, they feel called to do something that does require that. although, fewer and fewer jobs now are requiring degrees in the same way that they used to. True. And we're seeing a lot of corporations say, no, don't worry about that. Come work for us, do an internship. We'll train you. You can train people to do jobs. What you can't really do is train people to be more virtuous. You can't train people to have better character. That, if you get someone at 22, and they don't have the character that you need, it's a little too late for that. That happens in the earlier years. That happens in the home. That happens, I think, middle school is really where we need to see the character training, the discipling happen. And yet,
love you so much. Taught middle school for 5 years. I promise you that's 100% correct.
Yeah. And, even with our writing stuff, we teach English composition and grammar. But one of the things, we teach is, do what you check what you do, have a level of integrity. Don't just turn in this thing. We have a system. And when you can get kids into the system and they can learn it and do it and practice it and get better and better and better at it, that's what the word virtue comes from virtus in Latin or arete in Greek, which means excellence, right? And excellence is what people really value. I don't want someone who's happy with a 92%. I don't want someone's happy with an 81%. I don't want someone who's happy with a passing grade. We don't want to hire people. We want people who want to do the job 100% and not quit until they've got it done 100%. And so, that I think is something that is very hard to do in institutional education, because we have to compare kids and give them grades and have passing grades and move them on to the next grade, whether they really mastered or learned things or not. Whereas in many of these alternative, more home-based, more parental directed types of educational opportunities, we can really work on that virtue of excellence and the character qualities that contribute to developing that wisdom and virtue.
Well, I'm going to hop into something because I think it's a good time to do it. So what you're talking about in character development, we keep trying to shove this into schools. Oh, this character program, that character program. One of the things, and that's why I put your website back up here. One of the things that I absolutely loved about the stuff that I would buy from IEW, and I bought, I think, almost all of our English curriculum through IEW. And the one thing I absolutely loved about it is in the stories that you would tell to get them to say, okay, now rewrite this section, or, put them in different ways, or, the way you would get them to do that, the stories that you would tell and that you highlighted in these books were stories of excellence. They were stories of character. They were stories about people and situations that were wonderful and excellent. And that's, I think, a huge thing. You have to start with the right things for kids to read and get into. And we don't do that now. And I want to throw this in. I hope you don't mind, but I want to throw this in because this was so great when you were this is back. We all look a lot younger in this particular shot there, but you did something for us at that interim study. I don't think people really understand. And I just want to play, I kind of queued it up to one spot. So I want people to hear what you said at this particular spot.
In fact, CCSSI is a huge windfall for education publishers, since most districts in most states are being forced to replace their existing text with CCSI conforming text, and any differentiations by state standards have been superseded by the Common Core.
Okay, can you hear that?
Yes.
Okay, all right. I just want to make sure.
The big publishers can now sell the same or very similar books to all the states further increasing profitability. This, of course, makes it even harder for small publishers such as myself to keep a toehold in the public education market. Again, centralized and standardized education eclipses initiative and creativity. We are not only up against the marketing PR juggernaut of big players, we now have to show that what we do and have always done not only builds basic writing skills better than most anything out there, but somehow meets or exceeds the Common Core standards.
So that I just wanted to throw that in because I thought that was such a great kind of segue from what you were talking about. You were so Julia. She didn't even hear what you were saying. She was looking around. That cracks me up because Julia was there with us. The great thing about having you there and talking about that very thing was that people didn't understand that once you started shoving all of this garbage that was Common Core, that we know for a fact now never helped anything, when you started shoving this into the books and the big publishers started using all of the garbage, that once the big publishers used it, then it was going to trickle down. The little ones were going to have to use it to stay competitive. And we made this argument so many times. You made it so beautifully in that interim study. But it's my contention, and I would imagine it is yours too, that what you read, it really is a form of education, is probably the foundation of your education is what you read, which is why I just talked about why I thought the IEW books were so phenomenal, because they did character training without doing it. I mean, it was the stories, those trained the kids just hearing and reading stories of excellence, of human excellence, of wonderful, lovely things changes their perspective, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. And, we have over the years of creating products been very attentive to source texts for writing that are interesting to children, that are enriching and uplifting. We do a lot with fairy tales, fables,
Yes.
myths, parables, things that are contributing to what I like to use Russell Kirk's word, the moral imagination. And I actually have a pretty good talk. I think it's on YouTube. I have a lot of talks on YouTube if anyone's interested, but this one's called Fairy Tales and the Moral Imagination. And so it talks about the different, types of stories and how these help us understand realities about being human in this created universe, and what is good, and that good and evil even exist anymore is controversial in some circles. But this idea of using literature as a means to cultivate that moral imagination. Should I do that? Could I do that? Would I do that? Why would I do that? Why shouldn't I do that? These are all questions that kids will use when they go into a story and kind of project themselves into it. And I think one of the most dangerous things that we've seen in the last 20 years is this explosion of what euphemistically is called young adult literature, but it's very modern. It's very, very anti Judeo-Christian tradition in many, many ways. It's blurring the lines between right and wrong and good and bad and true and false. And it's undermining at the most sensitive period of time, which would be back to the junior high school age range, where, you're starting to, wrestle with how do you become an adult human being? How do you become a good adult human being? And so much of what's out there today, if kids even read, isn't even good for them anymore. So I always recommend that parents try to follow C.S. Lewis had a rule, read one old book for every new book to just keep your perspective. But I think it's a really hard time for parents to navigate the world of children's and young, quote, young adult literature. And so I hope that talk, Fairy Tales in the Moral Imagination, has helped many people. And I really enjoy doing that talk. And I have a lot of people come up to me, afterwards, almost in tears, saying, that's so helpful, that I was so confused, and it's so hard to know, what then shall we read? But John Sr., in a book called The Restoration of Christian Culture, pointed out that through all of history, it's really been the literature that allows for the transmission of culture from one generation to the next generation down line, more than anything else, because that's where it's written, that's where it's codified and solidified. And so we don't want to lose the great tradition of literature that has the value of goodness and truth and beauty and character and virtue and selflessness and sacrifice, all of those things that make us better human beings. So yes, we've tried to integrate stuff into what we do at the Institute for Excellence in Writing, but it's even bigger than that, because what children read and what you read to your children goes straight into their imagination.
Oh, that was wonderful.
Yeah.
I love that so much. Okay, we're getting to the point where I'm afraid you're going to have to get off. So let's look at this just really quickly, because you brought this up as we were getting ready to get on this morning. Can you tell us a little bit about Christian halls?
Yeah, so my friend Nick Ellis, who began Christian Halls, he's a phenomenally intelligent guy. He's his PhD from Oxford in ancient languages. And so he actually taught Greek and Sumerian at Oxford.
Holy cow.
But he left academia to do this. And so his vision is for local communities to establish educational learning communities with their values, and be able to do the same thing, which is get university credits and university degrees from, and he works exclusively with Christian and Catholic colleges. So you're avoiding a lot of the progressive woke stuff as much as possible. But a group of people, and you could do this with kids as dual enrollment at 15 or 16, 17, 18 years old, or with kids who've kind of finished high school. But you can get a group together, a local hall, and he's kind of modeling this off of Oxford, which is a university, but then there's these colleges or halls within Oxford that have a focus. And so you get a group of people and say, well, we'd like to learn together. And you can choose from a menu of over 1,000 classes that he can broker. So his organization brokers the courses from the university. Group of kids, homeschool co-op, grown-up homeschool co-op kids want to stay home, learn together, start a little group, start a hall, probably with the assistance of an adult mentor, choose what classes they want to do, sign up for those classes, get the curricular materials, but meet together once or twice a week, and then can do the readings and discuss together, write their papers and talk about it, read each other's papers, study together for the test. So you have a small community-based learning group, local-based learning community, who can actually, you can really just start your own college, and then get credits and degrees if that's what you want to do. And he's got all sorts of interesting things he could tell you about. Maybe you can have him talk at some point. He's a fascinating man. But one little example, just so you can see, a sheriff came to him in Texas and said, I'm wondering if you could get my deputies a degree in criminal, in criminology and criminal science, because I can do the physical training. I can do the training to get them what they need to know in terms of, law enforcement and safety. But I really hate sending them to the police academy in Austin, because they come back all, wokeified. And I'm wondering. And he said, absolutely. We have criminal justice programs. We can get a course. We can get your people a degree in criminal justice and you can administrate it right here in your county, in your program. And he said he's got another community of people, it's retired pilots. So they put together a program to get people a degree in aviation, right? And of course, you got your general ed studies, and you've got to, have your basic, English and literature and history and civic stuff. But he can get that and then get these specialized degrees for people or communities that want to do something. So I know several people who've done this. You start it in your living room. Maybe you meet in a church, or you have a community space. Kids get together for 1 day or 2 days a week. They all are enrolled individually in these courses, but Christian Halls will be the broker and help organize it and bank and track the credits and help you on the path of getting the degree if that's one of your goals. And again, for a fraction of the cost. And one of Nick's goals is to keep kids out of these kind of very progressive,
Wokified
junior colleges, community colleges, and just replace that with a community that you can create on your own. You can choose the courses you want, and you can study with the guidance of a mentor. But the mentor doesn't have to do all the work of figuring out all the classes and finding all the source texts and materials and all that. It's all there, but you can go with Liberty or Donnelly or Southeastern, or I think Hillsdale is coming online, Benedictine, lots of really good Christian and Catholic schools that have a pretty solid curriculum. So anyway, that's something to look into if you've got teenagers. Again, I love it. I'm planning to have one operating here in Eastern Oklahoma before my grandchildren are old enough to need it. So that's one of my goals.
We're going to have to get Mr. Ellis on. So yes, please send me his contact information. I would love to have him on to talk about that, because I do know a lot of people in the homeschool community who are like, so I raised them all up in this community, and now what, they're going to go to where?
Yeah.
So I do think that's been a real issue for a lot of us, because I know I do have one that's graduated and did graduate from UCO here, but I mean, and he didn't struggle too much because he was in engineering, and they can't really wokify that too much. They can't, so he did okay. But then I've got another kid who's at UCO who is in psychology, and that's the premier of the wokeology, I think. So, well, Andrew, do you have anything you can tell us before you have to squeeze off here? You've been such a phenomenal guest. I just loved having you so much.
Well, I'm super grateful you're still out there hitting it, being a voice for truth and getting, as many people as you can involved. I think we're very blessed in a way that things are changing very rapidly. And on one hand, it's requiring, parents and teachers and community leaders to be very aware and on the cutting edge of what's going on. And so we need the freedom of communication that you are part of to be aware. But we also are kind of looking at opportunities that never really existed. Opportunities in higher education, opportunities in career, opportunity for people, to start businesses and do things in a way that 50 years ago just wasn't possible. And that's why, I'm kind of hopeful. While I think, the dangers of technology are huge, and I lose sleep sometimes over that, we also are at this point where things are moving quickly, things are changing. A lot of parents, for the first time, are starting to say, wait a minute, this behemothing education system that has been getting worse for 70 years, I don't have to be a part of that. I was, and I could have probably got a better education, but I don't have to put my kids in this system the way it is. And I think that that's one thing that excites me, is just so many great options, from homeschooling to, Unbound, Christian halls. We have the power to take control, to take the reins of the education of our families and those we can influence. And to me, that's very hopeful. And then the young adults I see that were homeschooled, and I meet them now, and they're starting to have kids, and they're starting to homeschool their kids and reclaim the tradition of goodness, truth, and beauty as the core of what we should be, reading and writing and thinking and listening. That gives me a lot of hope. So there's a lot of reasons to be hopeful right now.
Well, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you being on and all of the information that you gave. And Lisa was very happy to see this. She's homeschooled her kids, and she has one older. Her last one's older now. I wish there was a clearinghouse for all this information for high schoolers so that parents could know about them and plan for them before their kids are adults. And we'll see if we can't work something out, maybe put something together on that. But Andrew, God bless you for what you do. I just love your program. IEW made my life so wonderful when I was homeschooling, and I just encourage other people to use it. And thank you so much for just being you and being out there. I appreciate you so much.
Well, thank you for having me, and continue a lovely conversation here. I've got to go record something else, but keep up the great work, Jenny, and maybe we'll do it again someday. And I'll get you in touch with both Jonathan and Nick, and maybe a few other things will come to mind.
That would be wonderful. Thank you so much, Andrew. Have a blessed day.
Thanks. God bless.
All righty. Bye-bye. I told you he would be awesome to have on, didn't I?
Well, yeah, but we need more time with him. We need to get him back on for another hour, because I want to know, like, how many legislators, school board members, how many people like that come up to him and ask, obviously he's very successful. He's got, an unbelievable business model, how many people in education in this state actually seek out his guidance, or what he would do in one way or another. And I'd like to see some of his results, like his kids versus other kids. And
well, he does. There are some schools that have come to him for IEW, and they do use IEW and some other things. But I'm telling you, I follow Andrew on Instagram, and so I saw him doing this little spot on Instagram for Unbound, and I thought, oh my gosh, I have to talk to him about that, because so many people who homeschool, it's like what we were saying at the end of what I was saying at the end of the program. You spend all this time 24/7 working on these kids, and then all of a sudden they go to this woke university, and they just, I've struggled with my youngest. He comes home saying things that I'm like, buddy, you weren't raised like that. We're not, this is, come on, man. And it would be so nice not to have to struggle with that. And that's, I think, why it was so wonderful to have him talk about Unbound, and then also Christian halls, because I think that's another one that if you could start homeschooling, because I think there are people out there who do that. They're like, well, why am I going to homeschool? Because then my kid just grows up and he has to go to college. And this is something that is becoming a big thing. And it's just like Andrew said, my husband hires people a lot. I mean, he's in on the interviews. They don't want people coming out of colleges now, because college is so horrible. They know that a degree means virtually nothing. So that he's like, I don't even care where you got your degree at this point. But what would be great if they said, you know what, I did this thing, and here are the groups that I learned from, and here are the courses that I did, and I could, I can learn this for you. That's what I think would be great.
Yeah. Well, and I think, what really hit me, what he said, was how just through time, the application of what's in the literature is kind of what's defined the culture, the current culture. And I mean, look at the books, look at how they've purposefully injected all those books into the school under the veil of, whatever they want to say, however they want to justify it. But right there, that's just an attack on basically the moral value system of this country for the last couple hundred years. And it's on purpose. I mean, it's literally, if you can't look at that, like, take what he said with the application of literature, take what he said and look to see how they purposefully damage these kids, and look how out of control all these kids are. Just look at all of the insane mental, emotional, all the issues they have. I mean, it's on purpose, and that's it. Just, I hope more and more people wake up, and I guess they are. He's becoming more successful, doing more projects, more. He's got more product, more. I guess he's got a lot of content online now. So I mean, that's a great thing.
Well, IEW was really, I mean, I wasn't just blowing hot air. I mean, it was probably my favorite thing. And the sad thing was, though, they really added some great things for littles, because he kind of had the middle school part all fleshed out when I was using it, which is great because my middle schoolers really needed it. And so that was great. But my gosh, they learned history. They learned, I can't even remember all the stuff they learned through just doing their IEW writing. And, it's funny because even though Samuel, my youngest, was my hardest, and getting him to actually do something, was like pulling teeth or hair or something. And sometimes it did come down to that, by the way. He is the best writer, and we only used IEW. We didn't use any other writing or English curriculum in my house because I loved it so much. He is the best writer. I mean, I can't tell you the numbers of times that actual professors at UCO have gone like, man, you're a great writer, because he's a great writer. I mean, he just is. And I attribute all of that to IEW. All my kids actually are great writers. I shouldn't just, say that about Sam. All my kids are, but it's not me, and it's a little bit them, but man, it's the IEW curriculum. It's phenomenal because they have to stop and think about things. They can't just go, I push a button on a computer. It's great. It's phenomenal. So
I am worried, though. He did mention the AI component. I am really worried about that, Jenny, because I mean, you know how technology has just been put into place and how it's escalated itself in schools now compared to just 10 years ago. How much technology is in those classrooms. But I do think ultimately that you're going to have specific AIs in every classroom. You may have a teacher in there just because you have minors, but the AI is going to be basically leading the classroom, leading all the education. And it's not that that's an absolute terrible thing, because maybe you get unbiased, maybe you get better content, but that it all depends on whose AI it is. And if it comes down to public education, it's going to be huge technology companies like a Google or OpenAI or, bad places
Pearson,
like that.
College Board, like he said, who are evil.
Yeah, they're going to create the AIs that are going to be in public education, and it's not going to be kind of, because those AIs, they're large language models. They produce what's put into them, basically.
Yeah.
So,
and that's what Dave says about the whole thing. He laughs. My husband's a computer programmer. And so is my older son. And they all kind of laugh about the AI thing because their thought is that basically it's just going to make everybody dumber, because most of the people who are writing this stuff anymore aren't like super smart. They weren't educated at the Waldorf school, all of them. I mean, they're not. So the AI itself isn't going to be what Trump seems to think it's going to be. I so disagree with him on that. I mean, I really do think that I'm hopeful that we can find a legislator who will run legislation to keep AI at least out of K-8, maybe K-9 classrooms. I mean, it shouldn't be in there because we shouldn't even have computers in K-8. It shouldn't be happening.
But I'll just tell you what I see, kind of the evolution. You know, I hope that AI just continues to be a tool and not like the takeover. Like, you use AI as a tool to help you, not necessarily, you know, do the job for you in one way or another. And I'll tell you, Jenny, think about this. Think about typing. Okay. You had typing class, I'm sure, at some point. I had typing class. I remember in 9th grade, typing, mandatory typing in 9th grade. I was typing like 22 words a minute. I remember, because my friend Paul Mayer, he was the rich kid in class. They had a little computer or something. He typed like 60 words a minute. We'd all be so jealous of him back in the 9th grade. But anyway, think about it. You couldn't live in the technology world for the last 20 years if you didn't have some pretty serious typing skills.
Oh yeah.
And now typing skills aren't that important anymore. And they're not going to be. And kind of moving, and look how quickly
I'm just sending you a text message.
Yeah. Look how quickly. Yeah. Now, still maybe at that engineer level, like your husband and your son, where they're coding. Yeah, they're going to have to do some typing. But I'm just telling you, like, every day, jokes, like my kids, we can all sit down and get in like one of these competitions, and my wife and I can still way out type our kids. I mean, we can just blaze them. And it should be the other way around, but they don't have to type, and that's going to be part of that technology. It's going to remove more of us, and it's going to take over more of these things. And I hope that, ultimately we can recognize that and use it as a tool and not as just the takeover mechanism, but, something else. Like in his stories, this is another kind of down the rabbit trail with technology. In his stories, like you said, with that fairy tale, you ask the questions. It makes you think. It makes you, kind of move in a manner that you have to make the decision and come up with, your brain providing the information. Where you look at now, technology gives you the sound, it gives you the story, it gives you all the colors, gives you you don't even have to think. You're just completely inundated by what it's plugging into you, rather than you, looking at something, conceptualizing it yourself, and then actually, making a decision. So, that's another thing with technology, is it's just a plug, right into your brain, like with all this K through 8th grade. I mean, there should be zero technology in all those classrooms, in my opinion. And I'll tell you what, when I ran for school board,
it's not just your opinion. It's based on really solid research, Michael.
Well, I didn't even have the research. That when I ran for school board, that I just said, look, this is bad news. And I'll tell you, even supporters of mine, they did not like that. They wanted their kids in, being as up to date with technology, because they feel like they're going to be left behind if they're not, right in the classroom, right on their iPads, whatever the case may be. And I'm like, it's the opposite. I said, your kid's not going to be able to think, because this thing has always made the decisions and gave them everything. They didn't have to think and rationalize.
That's the bottom line. It's like the scripture, you build your house on sand, the house falls down. We don't even know what foundation is anymore, because we just keep chasing, oh, this looks good. Oh, we don't even know what foundational is anymore, but foundational is reading and writing and questioning. That's foundational. And we don't do that right now. I want to get some, Katie said, well said, Michael. And Lisa says, but Jenny, government schools don't care about research. And that's true. And then she said, I hate even AI, even as a check. Why? The results are incredibly unstable and only changes people learn. It will always be a step behind us in intelligence until the day it obtains sentience and takes over the world. Who am I? Sarah Connor watching the downfall of the world due to AI. I can out-type my kiddos, but I have nothing on their thumb texting. It's a natural. That's so true. I'm not sure teachers are equipped to teach without computers, and that's very true. And what Lisa said, we've never been more stupid. We have all the info at our fingertips, and we've never been less intelligent. I say that all the time. So do you. And she said state standards is teach for the best. Board students who act out, medicating them, students who give up on learning altogether, limiting their potential, life altering. It's just such crap. America, AI is already listening to elementary students in this state, I'm pretty sure. And then Earl's daughter says, this is great. Sorry, Mike. Good to see you, Jenny. Michael held the fort down very well.
Hey, good. Well,
so you get a nice compliment there.
Yeah, thank you. Well, and another thing on that whole
technology. Oh, wait, hold on 1 second. Katie said it's like teach a man to fish, teach a kid to think. Good job, Katie. Exactly.
Well, and I'll go let's even dumb it down another level from there. Just basic thinking. I mean, that should be just automatic. But when you have that technology, and I've literally seen the studies on this 10 years ago, even when you have technology like that in a classroom, even typing compared to writing, okay, even that small of a difference, all those years. So we're talking about like K through 8. Your brain needs to develop certain neural pathways, and there's certain things that it has to do in order to mature and give you those critical thinking skills and actually create the density of your brain. Well, you don't create that when you're having nothing but input coming in. When you're just an input device for a computer, whatever, you're not creating those neural pathways and all those parts of your brain that have to develop a certain way, because we've been on this earth a long time, and that's how we're designed to work. So when you start replacing all of those methods that we're designed to use to make our brain operate in a certain manner when we're old or when we're older, then you're just that's why, in my opinion, we're getting these massive, all these mental, emotional, all these things, is because a lot of these kids, their brains have not developed correctly because they've had too much technology, from being on their phone in the grocery store to playing video games to, having all these iPads in the classroom, whatever. They're never unplugged to actually create all those ideas and colors and thoughts and things and process them in their own brain. They're given to them by some device. I just hate that.
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head specifically there. If something is doing something for us, we're not doing it ourselves. Yeah. And I know that sounds really stupid, and people are like, well, yeah, duh, something else is doing it. That's not what I'm trying to say is our mind isn't functioning then. And we are nothing but our mind. That is all we are. Be around somebody who's got dementia, and you'll figure out our minds are really on this earth the only thing we are. That's what we're made up of. And you twist that mind, you don't train that mind, you don't give that mind the food it needs to be able to grow. And you have what we have now, which is a bunch of kids that are mainly focused on themselves and mainly focused on what sex they are and mainly focused on what makes them feel good and mainly focused on all of those kinds of things because their brains have never had to function. They just are monkeys now. I push button. I push button. I feel and push button. That's where we are. And the saddest thing about it is you would try to run for school board, talk to these parents, and these parents are like, well, my kid needs a computer. And they don't even understand what they're saying. They don't even get what they're saying.
Yeah.
I mean, that's so sad. She was giving you props here. And Robert says, we don't need research to data or justify good morals or principles. Data is just corruptible science to circumvent common sense morals. I think that pretty much sums up our whole entire conversation with Andrew today. So those of you who got on late, you got to go back and see the first hour. You just have to, because
that was excellent.
Andrew Pudewa is the best. He's just the best. The best. Our kids were the last generation to spend 30 minutes at Crest in a shopping cart without holding on to an electronic device, booping and changing and never looking up at actual humans or groceries. It's, yeah.
Yeah, when my kids go with me to the store, even like my adult kids, I'm like, there's no phone. We're not going to be walking around the store with a phone. So just put it up, period. And it's funny because everybody always went to the store with me because then they could pick out stuff that they want. Now
you bribed them.
Yeah. Now they're just like, when I start hammering them on this stuff, they're just like, oh, just grab me this. Or I'm like, no, you don't get anything unless you go. But I just want them to be human, to observe when we're in there. Because if they're on their phone, they're not observing their surroundings and seeing what's going on, and maybe making their brain a little bit bigger because they're actually paying attention to stuff that they may not know. But it's pretty wild where we're going, Jenny. And like when I ran for school board, nothing blew my mind more than parents that were literally like bad mouthing me on social media because I didn't want a Chromebook in their kids' classroom. I mean, it was like,
well, I think the problem has become that parents now have been raised by computers, essentially. So many of them. And so you tell them, well, this thing is bad, or your kid can't learn on this. And then they freak and they're like, well, what do you mean to tell me that my kid was bad? So that must mean me and I'm bad. And they freak out, and they just simply can't listen to what you're trying to tell. I don't know. I loved what Andrew said, that he's nervous, but he's hopeful. And I do think, when you read the Bible, I looked it up one time, how many times the word remnant is said in the Bible. Not everybody is going to get this stuff. There are even some people professing Christians who aren't going to get this stuff. You have to be open to what the Lord says to you in those little wee moments, but you have to be able to have those without being on this thing, right? And you have to have those quiet moments. And so there are yep. You have to be open to hearing those things, and you can't if you're on a device. And I believe we've trained so much of this generation to be on a device that they're not going to listen anyway. So that's a real thing. Earl's daughter said, they also don't teach our children to play the tape all the way through when making choices. It's very instant gratification. They don't see the consequences coming until it slaps them in the face. And that's so true. I wish we had more time with Andrew, because, the one thing I was going to get into with Andrew was workforce. Let's talk about workforce, Andrew. I think he probably would have had plenty of things to say. And Lisa, I think I saw that one. I didn't get it, but there is an actual curriculum called Grocery Cart Math that uses different types of maths at grocery stores. I refuse to donate it or sell it. I have seen it though. I think it's still out there. So I don't know. We're at 125. There is an interim study at the Capitol today. I believe the one at 3 o'clock. I believe at 3 o'clock it's the poop show. They're talking biosolids today. I'm looking into my email to see if that's the case. And somehow I can't find it, but I think it was at 3, but there is one. You need to stay on top of what the interim studies that are going on. I do want to point out that we had a state representative, 4-term state representative, who literally was found to have abused his wife, and yet thought it was appropriate for him to just step down from his subcommittee position as chair of the appropriations and budget subcommittee rather than leave. And then we had Gentner Drummond, who thought it was appropriate to charge him and adjudicate him all in one day as misdemeanors because he didn't feel like trying to gouge your wife's eyes out was actually rose to the level of a crime. This is somebody who wants to be our governor. So
let alone not even taking any action on Lincoln's case, Jenny, and knowing about it.
And knowing about it and not doing anything about it. I mean, Oklahoma we're run by a bunch of elitist, oligarchical thinking people, because they're not all male, but we have a great deal of them that are male, especially the ones that participated in this abusing your wife isn't that big of a deal thing that went on. I don't know, Michael. I every day that I read the news, I am more disgusted with our representation at the state level every day. Every day.
Well, and is it going to get better? I hope. I mean, we do have some good people, grassroots people getting in there, but ultimately, is the general population becoming more aware, or are they getting more dumb? I mean, are they just taking whatever the mainstream people, whatever their the main leadership, legislators just pump out and just take it? Yeah, that's great. Whatever, even pay attention. Maybe they don't even pay attention at all.
I love Gentner Drummond. He's fighting for Oklahoma's future. He's also apparently fighting for people who abuse their wives. But, I guess this is what people believe is this BS. 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 This is what people believe. And the best thing that we can do is go, this is worse than dumb, Michael, apathetic. And our friend Katie, so much more to the Burn story. They get by with a little help from their friends. They just don't happen to be our friends.
Imagine that.
Facts. All right. Hoping to have the website up so that we can get our tickets purchased for the Liberty, Oklahoma conference coming up November 13th through 15th at Okana. You please go to the website and you can't make payments yet. I'm trying to get that done so we'll have it all done before the weekend. I'm hoping that we can all start getting our tickets on Monday and pumping all of that out. So this weekend, I'm just begging for you to pray for me that I have enough time to get all of this stuff that I need to get done this weekend. So that's what I meant. Yeah, and I'm with you. Even our DC representatives discuss me. I can't ever shake Langford saying 14-year-olds can even consent. But here's my thing, and I love you, Earl's daughter, but I just don't even pay any attention to these people. Josh Brakeen is probably the only one that I even pay attention to because he's got some semblance of reality in his life and a backbone and really strong faith in Jesus, but the rest of them, I can take or leave. And certainly Tom Cole and Frank Lewis, what's his name? Frank. See, I don't even know these people. Who's the one out west?
Oh, Lucas.
Come on. Lucas, thank you, Lucas. I was like, Lewis. Oh my goodness, I am losing my mind. All of these people are the worst.
Good old boys. They're all good old boys, Jenny. They're in the good old boys club.
The worst. And I really want to know how you start out as a pastor at a camp and get to be a millionaire after you've served. How does this happen?
After you've served the people, Jenny.
The people, we the people, serving we the people, it's really super lucrative. Oy vey. Okay, well, we're going to get off of here.
It's so corrupt and it's so broken. You just wonder, when is it actually going to snap? It's just bending. It's bending. When is it going to snap and we take everything back and return it to, a sound system for us, by us?
Well, I think it's coming. I mean, I think people are getting to the point where they're just going, I'm so sick of this crap. I think they're, and honestly, in Ty Burns's favor, that was so horrible that it really woke a lot of people up who were like, really? Gittner, Drummond, our AG won't bring back a poor little kid and keep DHS from stealing children from people, but he'll make sure he gets a person who is not nice to his wife and we'll say was even abusive to his wife, gets him misdemeanors in a day. Just saying. Okay. I don't know. It's like, we can go back up here and see what Julia said. He always has the last word, and a million betrayals add up. Amen. Yeah. All right. On Friday, we are going to have Mick Rosado. Y'all are going to want to see Mick. Mick cracks me up. Mick is
Mick. I thought we were having Eric on.
Oh, Eric. No, I'm sorry. You're completely right. You're completely right. Thank you. I was looking down. Next Friday is Mick. So Friday is Eric Snyder's coming back to talk about, this time he's going to talk about gold and silver, but he's also going to talk about, and this is going to be a really kind of a nice little Lego. We're going to bind these two podcasts together because he's going to talk about this magazine that he's working with called Red, White, Blue. That is remember Weekly Reader? I loved Weekly Reader. When I was a kid, I could not wait for Weekly Reader. It was like my favorite thing. This is the non-woke version, because now Weekly Reader is woke, but this is the non-woke version of Weekly Reader, the Red, White, Blue. You need to look it up. I think it's redwhiteblue.mag. Look it up before we get together to talk to Eric about it. But you guys are going to want this for your kids. It is a great little deal. Homeschoolers for sure. Try to get it into your school if you can. But Eric will talk about that. And then he and Michael, I'm sure both will get into it on the gold and silver thing. So make sure to be here at 9 o'clock, not at 10. You people who keep coming in late, stop it. Come in. So we'll see you at 9 o'clock on Friday morning with Eric Snyder. And if you didn't see the beginning of this video, please go back and watch it and then share it with friends, especially those who homeschool. They're really going to want to see it. The greater the power, the more dangerous the abuse. Edmund Burke. Amen to that. All right. We good, Michael? Anything else?
That's it.
Perfect.
It's up to us as always. No one's coming to save us. Trump still hasn't saved us. We're going to have to do it.
Got to do it. All right, everybody. Have a beautiful day. It is a beautiful day outside. Come to the Capitol this afternoon for the interim study. If you can make it on biosolids, that would be wonderful. And otherwise, we will see you on Friday at 9 a.m. We'll talk to you then. Bye.